where I'll have the pleasure to present a project that emerged after last year's conference. Last year's conference was a time where we launched the Bologna Open Recognition Declaration, and one of the things we wrote in the declaration was we were going to work towards building an open architecture to support lifelong and life-wide recognition of learning. And so we submitted a project, and it has been accepted, and we have the pleasure to have with us a very strong French delegation, and maybe it's a sign why the proposal was accepted. And at the end, the French people, please, we meet. Oops, what's going on? Okay, some bad contact. We'll take a photo of the French delegation, because I can tell you, since we have organized conferences starting with e-portfolio, it's the first time we have so many French people attending one of our conferences, and so I'm particularly proud of this achievement, thanks to some of the French members of the delegation. So the title of the project is MIRVA, which stands for Making Informal Recognition Visible and Actionable. In fact, when we submitted the project, it was visible and accessible, but I think actionable is more interesting because you want to do something with the badge. We want to action them. So in 2011 were born the open badges, and then in 2015, I won a project with the MacArthur Foundation, which helped to develop with the Discandum the open badge passport. 2016, the Open Recognition Bologna Declaration, and in 2017, now we have the Open Recognition Day, and we hope that by 2020, MIRVA will have had a strong impact on open recognition. So why do we need open recognition? And through my work on recognition, I've discovered recently this German philosopher, Axel Honneth. He is a director of the Frankfurt School of Sociology. And he says something which is very important, which is recognition precedes cognition. And that's very important because if we are in the field of education and we are here to make people create, build, connect knowledge, then recognition precedes cognition. And so, which is very strange is that school, which is a place we are supposed to develop cognition, we are not really places where we encourage people to recognize each other. And in fact, we have this joke when we are driving from Joigny with my friends Nate and Don, where we're thinking about a new name for the conference, and we're thinking maybe we could call the conference the Human Recognition and Development Conference. And then I wondered, okay, how can we include school education? Because no, kids are not humans. They're not supposed to recognize. They don't have human rights in schools. So, okay, it was a joke, but it fell flat. Okay, it happens. So, when we speak about formal and informal, there are some people who like categories, and there is, the OECD definition about formal learning, non-formal learning, and informal learning. I think it's very, in fact, when you read OECD publications, depending on countries, they will put some learning into informal, or another country, they put the same kind of learning into non-formal learning. So these are categories that are useful for writing reports. But in my opinion, it's an opinion, it's not a scientific truth, there is learning and formalized learning. And so what we call informal learning is a space that has not been yet colonized by formal learning. When we learn, we formalize things. And it's the same for recognition. There is formal recognition, accreditation, certification, but there is also informal recognition. But informal recognition, in fact, happens every day. It is recognition. So we have recognition and formal recognition, learning and formal learning. And in fact, if there was not informal recognition, there wouldn't be any formal recognition. Think a second. A diploma is a formal process of recognition. But what makes the value of a diploma? It is an informal recognition in the community. So without in fact, what we call informal is life. And so what is important to consider is that informal learning is not an inferior form of learning. It is learning. Informal recognition is not an inferior form of recognition. It is recognition. And to paraphrase a French philosopher, I learn, therefore I recognize. Recognition is part of a process of learning. And so if we think that recognition is an integral part of learning, when we think of recognition in the field of education, but also in the field of work, we always think of people seeking recognitions. How can I be recognized? What are the diploma I can receive? And when you look at a CV, a resume, what you see in a resume is the recognition you have received from others. Yet in your everyday life, you recognize other people. And so the question is, with what we will try to do with the MIRVA project, is not just treat people as agents seeking recognition, but as active agents of recognition, as recognizant agents. And in fact, it makes sense, because if I ask you to recognize me, you are a recognizant agent. And so the beauty of this philosophy, as was mentioned by a previous speaker, is that even if you are not recognized, you have the power to recognize others. And it is important to give in terms of mindset. Am I someone I'm not recognized? Yes, you might not be recognized, but you have still the power to recognize others. And I think it is important to make people understand that recognition is not just something that you seek, but it is something that you can give to others. And so in my work on open badges, I've tried to classify, it's not a classification, but try to create a map of the recognition territory. And there are two axes, the formal, non-formal, formal being centered on institutions, non-formal being centered on the community, and traditional, non-traditional, traditional being more about the description of the past, about static. If you take a diploma, it tells what you have done in the past, and it is static. Now you could imagine something which is different, something which is an opening to the future. In the French education system, a long time ago, you had prices, un premier prix. And the price, you could have a paper that you could display on the wall of your bedroom, but you also had a book. And the book was an opening to the world. And I think it would be interesting to consider badges as also something that could be like a prize, the old traditional prize, which is an opening to the world. This is what you can do with a badge, not just what you have done in the past. These are the projects you can engage in. These are the further learning. These are the activities you can do. And so if we look at badges today, the center of gravity of badges project are in the lower left corner. It's about conformance. And I've heard it again and again, even during this event. We all speak about standards. How can we align badges to standards? It's not to say that standards are bad. I've designed competency standards and probably will continue to do. But a competency framework is something that is produced out of the informal. You know, that people practice, and then you formalize this practice, and then you have a standard. The question is, how long will it take to make this standard evolve? Maybe 5 years or 10 years, or maybe it won't evolve because it will become obsolete. So the question is, how could we move the center of gravity of existing projects from formal recognition of informal learning to another place? So one of the dire consequences of a number of open badges projects, I don't say all of them, but a number of them, it was what I call the increased colonization of the learning and recognition space by formal education. If you think of schools, the number of standards that have been developed, 21st century skills, and you create competency frameworks for these. And schools, there was a space of freedom, which was an informal space, and suddenly the schools say, oh, we need to stamp that. We need to recognize the informal learning that happens outside the curriculum. And suddenly we formalize the space of freedom. And I think this is a danger of badges, and sometimes I've called the badges, they could become the weapons of mass destruction of education. And I think the very same weapons could become the weapons of mass liberation of education. We could decolonize learning with badges. And so the objective of the MIRVA project is really to move the center of gravity into the upper right corner. So two ideas, very, very simple, that we could have the dream badge. What is a dream badge? When you think about, if you want to know the identity of a person, it's not just where the person does come from, what the person has achieved, but where the person wants to go. So you could imagine that in the very first model of badges, there was the idea that it would be a badge issuer that would issue the badge that you would receive. But why can't you ask the badge of a doctor? I want to become a doctor. And you get the badge of a future doctor. And then you can go to the Red Cross or to Médecins Sans Frontières and say, I would like to work with you because I would like to become a doctor. So I'm ready to do some community work and voluntary work. And then this badge becomes a kind of micro portfolio that aggregates all the information, the endorsements, your experiences for becoming a doctor. Or a discovery badge. A discovery badge, for example, you could imagine a badge which is about astronomic apparel, and which would tell you all the things you can do with this apparel. And that would be an invitation to discover things. So there are so many things we can do with badges that we have hardly started to explore. And so while it was difficult to do it with the very first specification of open badges, now we have a new specification, which is 2.0, which allows the endorsement. And that was a thing which was interesting when we had discussion about endorsement in the open badge community, is the first idea of endorsement, we wanted to have badge classes endorsed. That is, we wanted to say, if for a badge to have value, it should be stamped by IBM, for example. And so we were interested in fact, endorsing the issuer of the badge. What we can do now with the new endorsement, because a badge, after all, is an endorsement, you can endorse anything you want. So, for example, you can endorse anything that has an identification. So, for example, you can endorse a website. A website has a URL. You could say, oh, this resource, this learning resource is great. Or even if you wanted to endorse someone, you could use a URL in the LinkedIn profile and say, I endorse this person using this address. Basically, everything that has an address on the web could be endorsed. And so if we explore the potential of endorsement, I think there is a lot that could be done. And that could be as simple as a like, clicking with a button. So if we think about the way we were thinking in 2011 about badges, is we wanted to make informal learning visible. What we want to do now is how we can make informal recognition visible. You know, the focus before was about the learning, we make it visible, but when you make the learning visible, you make the recognition visible as well, except we didn't consider that. We were just looking at the learning and not at the recognition. And looking at the recognition changes the focus, and that has been made possible now thanks to open endorsement, the new specification. What we would like to achieve, this is my conversation with my colleague in the project, okay? So they might not all agree with that. We are starting the project now, so we have 3 years to develop the framework. But after open badges, open endorsement, I think we should move towards open recognition communities. So open badges, the very first version of open badges, the power was in the hands of the issuers. It was issuer-centered. And all the people who said that badges are learner-centered, it's a big lie. It's just propaganda, because the person who has the power is a person who can issue a badge. Then with open endorsement, everybody has the power. It is really distributed equally. And now with open recognition communities, the power is into the hands of the community. And this is what I would like to share with you. So what is an how can we imagine an open recognition community? You are familiar now with, those who didn't know about badges, you went to two workshops today that explain to you how badges is created. So basically, what happens when a badge is created today? You take a badge and you put it in your backpack, in your passport, and then you might put it on LinkedIn or on Facebook. That's all you can do with it. But a badge is created in context, and when you put it into your backpack, you lose the context. Now imagine that instead of having an individual backpack where you put your badge when you receive it, you can still do that. I don't say you shouldn't do that. But you have spaces that are collective backpacks, that are community backpacks, where all the badges you have received that are meaningful within that community, you can put them here. And then these badges can be endorsed by the member of the community. So like that, the context will be there. The relationship will be there. And then, as you are a member of the community, you have a kind of implicit endorsement of the community, and the community can have more or less power, more or less recognitions by other communities. So you could imagine that, for example, you are a Java programmer, and you could create a kind of global backpack for Java programmers. And then you would put your badges, your experiences with Java, but maybe also with project management and other things that could create meaning with it within that community. And maybe the same badges, you could put them somewhere else in another community where they would also create meaning. So suddenly what you have is because if you think about how you can value badges, if you have a personal data store, a backpack, and you would say, oh, this badge can be seen by this service, this group of badges can be seen by this other service, or this one is private, this one is public. This is very, very complicated for people to manage. And if you look at how you manage access rights in Facebook, it's not just that Facebook is evil. There is a real problem of user interface in order to manage access rights. But now if we think differently, if we think that badges are like a currency, I like to say a devise in French because we can play with the word devise, but if it is like a currency, what you can do, which is very normal for people, you take money out of your pocket and you put it, you give it to the merchant, you put it in a bank, in a safe. So it can be a natural gesture for people to say, I have these badges, which is my capital, and then I'll put it in the places where they can bring value, and they can bring value in communities. So instead of having my badges here, in my backpack or in my passport, they will be distributed in the different communities to which I belong and in which they make sense. And open recognition communities can be recognized, can be endorsed. And then you can have multiple layers of communities. For example, if I take the Java programmer community, you have the Java programmers that are more on the system side, system design, others that are more on the user interface side. And it's not the same competencies they develop. They both use Java, they both program, but it's not the same competency at all to work on user interface and system design. So how could we implement open recognition communities starting from what we have today? One simple way to do it, I always say simple and people say, no, it's not that simple after all. Imagine that you create a backpack, a community backpack, okay? I call that open recognition community. And that has one service associated to it, which is badge issuing, okay? And you receive a badge, which is the badge of the community. And then you can give the badge to other people so they can join the community, or people can apply to get part of the community. What is interesting with this model is the fact that the issuing service is at the periphery of the community. It is a service to the community. It is very different from the previous model we had, where we were the issuer, okay? I am the issuer. I have the authority to issue. Here, it is just a service. It is very banalisé, as we say in French, would it be in English? Trivialized, yeah. So this is, I think it is a model which is worth considering. And if we think that we want to associate services, then imagine if we have this idea of a backpack as we have today, and that will require every individual to download an app, for example. We mentioned the App Store earlier. How many people will download it? And what will be the number of badges that will be accessible? Here, if it is at the community level, that suddenly you have thousands of millions of badges depending on the size of the community. And someone would be able to come and provide a service and say, hey, you have this big community with all these badges, which is very interesting. I have an idea of an application I would develop for you. Or even you could imagine that the members of this community could say, hey guys, why don't we spend each of us €1 in order to have a service, and €1 with 20,000 people, that's 20,000 euros. You could find someone who might be willing to develop an application for the community. So I think we would have the power of the community. We still have the power of the badge we had before, but this time the badge being within a community would give people a high level of power. So the idea is badge issuing would be just one of the many services that would be provided to the community. And we need services, we badly need services. And of course, communities could be combined. And the same badge could be used in multiple communities. And so with that approach, we would really be able to do this arithmetic of social capital. We would be able to see my social capital, which is composed of the endorsement I've received, the badge I've received, but also the endorsements I've given. And I think this is very important, because when you think about a CV today just shows the endorsement you have received. It doesn't show the endorsement you have given to other people. And probably this is something which is very, very important. If you want to hire someone as a manager should have the ability to recognize other people. How can you know that the manager is able to recognize other people if you don't have evidence that the manager has recognized people in the past? So, and also the fact that the people you recognize, the people you trust, might be the people that will help you when you have a problem to solve in your company, in your work. So suddenly you will be able to provide a 360-degree image of yourself. And then what you could do is a new kind of portfolio that I call the recognition portfolio, or the grand ledger of recognition. Don't take it literally, because it looks like a ledger. I think we can make something which is much more fun on the interface. But basically, that the idea is we have capital, and our capital could be organized in such a way that we would be able to valorize it. I know valorize, it's a word we use a lot in Europe, which is, it's not English at the beginning. I think that the French who introduced that in the European language. And so if we think in terms of technology, it's a technology which is related to trust. And if we think about trust and currency, you have the famous dollar, where it is written, "In God we trust." And then we have the Bitcoin. And the Bitcoin says, "In technology we trust." And I think with badges, we could say, "In you I trust." And that's why in French we call that a devise, because devise could be a phrase like this one, but also a currency. And I think it is important, if we want to build a trust society, to say that we are the elements at the source of trust. We manage trust. We know who we can trust. So if we were thinking in terms of communities of recognition, of open recognition, open communities of recognition, I think that would improve the user experience. It would be more organic, less individualistic. I think this is one of the things that annoy me with the portfolio and annoys me a bit still with the backpack. It is still very individualistic in the way it is. It doesn't mean the individual doesn't exist and doesn't have rights, but the type of processes we create around that emphasize the individualistic approach and not the community dimension. It provides a much easier, more organic control, access control to data. And if you want to empower individuals, you need to empower communities. Individuals don't exist independently from communities, and communities don't exist independently from individuals. And so if we create a tool, an environment, a space that empowers community, we will have also the means to empower individuals. So now, just a few words about the MIRVA project. So as in any European project, you have to have deliverables. I hate the term we use now. It's called intellectual outputs, and it makes me cringe each time I have to pronounce it, but it's a deliverable. And so we have to create an open recognition framework, guidelines, a number of guidelines, and of course a knowledge base for open recognition. So it's a 3 years project. We received 450,000 euros nearly, which is a lot of money, and I hope that we'll be able to raise more through the project we'll be doing together. And here you have the list of the partners involved in the project, and we will say a few words just after my presentation. And so, just to emphasize one key element that has made this project possible, technically, so we can move to the next stage, has been the open endorsement proposed by the new open badge specification. It is absolutely crucial to move to the next stage. So what can you do now? If you have not done it yet, you can sign the Bologna Open Recognition Declaration. You can contribute to the Open Recognition Day. Join us at EPIC, yeah, because it's done, so it was for a preview. I will use the slide, sorry, for that one. And then you can become also a MIRVA associated partner to contribute to our work, and we'd be very happy to welcome some of you. We can't fund you because of rules of European projects, but I think that together we'd be able to raise more funds to achieve our goals and support your activities with us. Thank you.
So maybe we can entertain some questions of Serge. Does anybody have any questions about that presentation? Or are your heads still spinning? Any questions? Wondering if we might have some commentary from some of the partners. have to walk through and. Yeah. Okay.
So my name's Dominic Orr. I'm one of the partners in the MIRVA project. I'm from a research institute in Germany. Maybe firstly the reason why I'm interested in the project and was very pleased to take part in the proposal as well is one of the things I'm looking at a lot is the whole debate on skills mismatch, or rather initially it was a lot about skills gaps. And there's a lot of debate about that, but in fact what it is, it's much more about trying to make people's competencies just more visible. And I think these kind of ideas are really important for this. And particularly I think it's an interesting point that Serge was emphasizing there, this kind of trap of saying the only way to make things visible is if it can be aligned to a formal curricula or a formula framework. And don't forget, I'm sitting in Germany. And if we want to align something, it becomes very technical. And I think we heard already today that it's not just the public services that are interested in that, but it's also other employers. It's also people in civil society. So I think this idea is really interesting. And I think we need time to develop it. So I'm very pleased also the project takes 3 years. So we have to get used to these ideas. That would be, in a way, my comment of why I'm involved and what I'm particularly interested in. Philippe, do you want to?
Okay. Hello, I'm Philippe from Normandy. So I represent agricultural education in Normandy, a high school that is a partner from MIRVA. On our side, it's about open endorsement. We find that MIRVA is a big opportunity to experiment these endorsements, especially around citizenship engagement from our students in our schools. We never really managed to recognize their engagement within the formal context of our schools, because we always thought it was the institution to recognize this engagement. So we see with open endorsement opportunity to let the students recognize themselves for their engagement, and if they're working in associations, perhaps the people they help in their association. But we think it's not our role as institution to recognize their engagement. But we could endorse their badges or their endorsements. So, and also I represent the network in Normandy in a project called Badging Normandy. So partners that are working together to experiment the potential of open badges in many fields. I explained this to you Friday morning. Voilà. Gérard?
My name is Gerard. I'm very pleased to also join the MIRVA project. As being from the Netherlands, I'm also happy to have other already associated partners joining. What my goal is to see for society and to make people with the distance to the labor market more visible, the talents, not only by their diplomas but also by other pathways. So an open endorsement, for instance, is a very good way to make that happen. So we have 3 years and happy to work in a network in Europe but also in the Netherlands, hoping to establish a bigger network. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Chiara from Cineca again. As Cineca, we are in a very special position in this project. We are very proud to be part of it because we have, as you know, we have a badge platform, which is Baster, and we are universities, so the former colonizers, yes, we are. And we also work with a lot of non-formal trainers and assessors, so companies, institutions, associations, and so on. And we're looking forward to bring all this into the MIRVA project and bring MIRVA project outputs back to all our network and create a virtuous network.
Hello, my name is Bert. I'm representing Open Knowledge Belgium in this project. And actually, I'm looking forward to work on this and explore the 2.0 standard, which Nate worked on a lot, because it's now it's new and there's a lot of things possible, and we're yet to discover what we can do with it. So it will be an exciting 3 years to make that happen.
Hi, just a question. I'm not partnering the project, not yet. Serge, you mentioned that the Bitcoin was technology-based, and but I wonder on what technology will this project rely? Because I guess it must be a distributed system and distributed technology. Can you tell us more about that, please?
I just use we'll use badges. Badges will be the fundamental element. And the beauty of badges is you can keep them, if you destroy the whole system, but you still have the badges, you will be able to rebuild the system. So the beauty of badges is very, very resilient. As long as you have the badges, you will be able to recreate the things that could have been destroyed. So, for example, if we destroy all these networks, and we still have the badges, we'll be able to recreate these networks from the badges that we'll have saved in our own data bank. So the main component will be open badges, and then we just have to rethink the way we store badges. Today we have the backpack and the passport. Tomorrow we will have probably also the backpack and the passport and the spaces where we'll be able to put together our badges in order so that they grow together. So it's a technology that already exists. And probably what we will do, we will have signed badges, so we'll use asymmetric encryption, which is used in the blockchain. So basically, we can recreate what is done with blockchain without the blockchain. We can make badges that are 100% secure just by using asymmetric encryption. But that's technical development are not part of the project. We are not funding for that. But on the other hand, what the project will do will create hackathon and events where we invite people to develop the technologies. Like, it was before the project, but this is exactly what Bert did with Open Knowledge Belgium, where students developed ESCO Badge. And I think ESCO Badge was Bert's initiative with Cognizone. And I think this is the kind of things we would like the project to do. Being some kind of animator of the community, so we will see these technologies emerge. We can't provide it, but we know people who can, and it is our responsibility to make this community alive and have more people joining us through hackathon and creathon and this kind of event.
That's actually a great segue to a question I have for Serge, which is, can you talk about the communications strategy and how that might synchronize with other more grassroots initiatives like Open Recognition Alliance? So MIRVA, Open Recognition Alliance, how can they work together?
The Open Recognition Alliance is just the people who support the idea of open recognition, and so we are open to everybody who wants to support this initiative. MIRVA is the expression of that. It is one project. In fact, the Open Recognition Alliance doesn't exist as a legal entity, but as a proxy for this legal entity today, we are using the Espace Mendès France as the coordinator of the project. And I think by the end of the year, we'll create Reconnaître Open Recognition Alliance, which will be a not-for-profit association in France. And we are looking for people who want to join. And then then it would be Reconnaître that could play the role of a proxy for the Open Recognition Alliance until we decide to create a legal structure, if legal structure is required at some point. But at least we'll have a structure which will be able to channel funds to support the project. But now we have a project that can channel initiatives, which is already a lot.
Thank you. Michel from Réseau des Urfistes. I have a remark. The aim of the MIRVA and the movement is to, you said, decolonize the formal system, the formal learning system. The fact is there is a lot of money put into the formal learning. There are also a lot of skills into the formal learning system, and we have in France, maybe elsewhere, a problem with the efficiency of the formal learning system. I think that we are a lot here coming from the formal learning system, and I was
survived
wondering
it.
And I was wondering if the aim cannot also be colonize the learning,
the formal learning
system. That is, import into the systems a way of doing things that were conceived elsewhere in the informal learning system, for instance.
Yeah, I like the idea of colonizing the colonist. Why not? But yes, I think it's a way to view things. No, I had something, but sorry.
Okay. Any other comments, questions?
Hi, my name is Caroline Bellon-Ménager, and I work for an association of 2 universities in France and an engineering school. I'm part of a national Erasmus Plus program project, which is called ExtraSup, which is about the recognition of the extracurricular activities of students, because there's a law in France that says that students can ask for the recognition of their extracurricular activities. So I presented the open badges to them, to the steering committee last week, and the old professors got scared about this idea that learners or students could actually endorse, even though I presented the idea that, we were working in Poitiers, in my university, on international mobility skills. And so the idea that a student abroad could also endorse the institution, the employer, which is welcoming him or her, whatever. But the old professors got scared about the fact that they could be not endorsed, or they could be some kind of TripAdvisor thing about them not being recognized by their students. So the idea that there's suddenly reciprocity and the possibility for students to have a say was very scary to them. So, and I talked to Michel, who just talked a few minutes ago. Yesterday, I talked to him about this, and this is something that he thought we should hide, not talk about this possibility to endorse in return. So how can we approach that issue without scaring people, and how can we ensure that it's a new way of looking at things that could be interesting for teachers, or you see what I mean. Thank you.
Well, I think for some of them I might suggest lobotomy, but it's not. It wouldn't be approved by people. But what you described is exactly what we have in France, which is a distrust society. And I just display a slide, which is a study from the OECD. When you ask a question to an adult, do you trust other people? What you can see, there is a huge difference between countries. And France, we are to the top. That is, France is described as a distrust society. Teachers don't trust pupils. The states don't trust teachers, and we have an inspectorate, which is here to control, not to help. So that's what you described. So the question is, how can we create a trust society from a distrust society? And I think probably with badges, with open recognition, we have the weapons to create society. Now, one thing I said about open badges at the very beginning, in the very first version, where you could only collect badges as a student and not issue badges, as the way the system was organized. Basically, once you have recognized that a badge is a trust statement, I said, I've been denied the right to trust other people. And I think this is what we have with open badges and what we have with endorsement. We have the power to trust people. And not just to ask to be trusted. We have the power to trust. And so we can create a technology which is very easy just as easy as a like on Facebook. This is the kind of technology we should aiming for. And so, yes, I would like France to move towards, more towards Finland and Denmark. It reminds me, I was involved in a project in Tunisia. Tunisia invited consultants from Finland to help them to develop new pedagogies. And as I spoke French and they knew them, they invited me to be part of the project. And the thing is, Tunisia is also a distrust society. And the problem is not to learn new gimmicks about new pedagogies. If you have a distrust society, and the big difference there is between France, Tunisia, and Finland is not just the methods of learning. It's the fact in one country there is an inspectorate, and in another country there is no inspectorate, because it's a trust society. So I think if we want to change education, trust must be part of it. And so we need to recognize the capacity of people to recognize. We should encourage mutual recognition. We need to create a recognition economy. We need to create a trust economy. And without trust, it's difficult to develop an economy. So, yes, this is where we are now. And I hope that with the MIRVA project, we'll all move towards Denmark. Also, what is interesting here in the diagram, you can see that the more educated people are, the more trustworthy they are. Well, you could think that, oh no, the more educated you are, the more you could be different of other people. No, here it's clear. The higher education, the higher level of literacy. So more education, more literacy. And so, yes, this is a French, if you read French, this is a good book, France, Société de la Défiance, how the French social model destroys itself. And basically, ignorance leads to défiance in English, sorry. How do you say défiance in English? Distrust, yes, distrust is so easy. Distrust and knowledge leads to trust. And I think it is important as educators, as business people, to understand that there is a direct connection between ignorance and distrust and knowledge and trust.
If I can add something to what you're saying here is that I don't see that much the problem of one person or one organization distrusting others and their ability to endorse the organization. I see more the problem of that organization not trusting enough in the organization itself. And I explain that if I know that I'm very good, I am quite sure you're going to endorse me. If I'm not sure about how good I am, then I start not being sure that you're going to endorse me, which is usually the case. So I think that you could approach your organization in this way, say, well, if we're good enough, why shouldn't they endorse us? So if we have this fear, maybe we should, raise the level of our quality so that our students would be happy to endorse us. So in a way, you could use open endorsement as a tool to measure your quality. And you can use the students' endorsements as as for this, to see how the perception that they have of you, of the organization, the perception they have of the quality of the courses you give. Because we all know that if something is appreciated, there is going to be an endorsement. So And I have, well, I'm not going to talk about examples because they're not nice, but I think that could actually help if you want to approach it in that way. Let's use open endorsement to see how good we are, and let's use them to teach us how good we should, how better we should become to have the endorsement. This could be another way of seeing the problem, because I think this is part of the problem, maybe.
Any other comments? Just to make a comment of my own to your situation, it strikes me you're asking for permission from the old professors. And I think the situation, that's still that power relationship. And if you can find a more horizontal relationship, such as reaching out to community organizations who might endorse on a different level, not as formal, that may be a way around also. I think we're pretty much coming. Oh, here's Nate.
Thank you, Don. This is Nate. One quick question, Serge and other partners, about logistics. You have some technical partners with you on behalf of other developers in the open badges, open recognition community. How can non-partners best support this work? And when can we get engaged? And what would you like help with?
Let's discuss that at dinner. I would like to thank you very much for your attention, and I would like to thank the European Commission for making this project possible. But I would like also to thank a very special person. There is Nate. I think Nate has been absolutely instrumental in the production of the 2.0 specification that will be using and help us to move to the next stage. So I think it's great. Also, Eric has for played a very important role in the creation of the Open Badge Passport, which is the first open source platform we have on open badges in Europe. So I think we have great people here, and I'm very confident that they will produce even better work, and more people will join us. So I would like to thank you both.
We're back at it at what time tomorrow? 8:30, and then we're starting at 9.
Yes, we're starting at 9. Tomorrow we start at 9, yes. Yeah. It will be a long day tomorrow, I'm sorry, but it will be a very intense day. Mm-hmm. You will be tired at the end of the conference.
Lots of learning.
Yes, I'm sorry for that, but that's the price you have to pay if you want to have fun. So tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock it starts here.